will be augmented by technology-enabled services. We have the ability to bring technology to bear in circumstances that were out of reach before. Some of this is because of wireless mobility. Some of it's because of the miniaturization that we've been able to exploit in devices. Some of it's because of the ubiquitous broadband capabilities and the economics that are driven out of the scale that we've been driving in the context of industry standard technologies. These things come together to allow us to go and attack these problems in a way that was really not in reach before. In particular, you can push the burden of from the person to the technology. We think that the continuity that the cloud provides and the consistency that it allows us to address across a range of devices as people move through the changing circumstances of their day allows us to allow the technology to take advantage of that context to identify your intentions and to offer assistance, rather than what we have today where you have to understand the technology well enough to figure out where it might be useful, and then coax and cajole it to do whatever it is that you're asking. We think that the cloud's going to allow us to bring technology and make it relevant, not just to the 20% of the people that are connected to the internet today across the world, but to the other 80% that today aren't connected. So I hope this gives you some sense about why we think it's so important not to simply think of the cloud as the ability to build and deliver infrastructure utilities. We think it has a much more transformative effect over time. We think the implications of this new delivery model that allow us to deliver these technology-enabled services in a broader range of human circumstance is going to transform the world in the same way that the personal computer did in the early 80s. Okay? So with that, there's another thing that I want to mention, which is the cloud allows us to solve some of these problems because if we can start to address design in a fundamentally different way. To be able to accomplish these goals, to realize these benefits, we have to go beyond simply taking the existing applications and workloads that we have and trying to expose interfaces to allow them to interact programmatically. That bottoms-up design process allows us to be able to integrate across complex applications, which is an important thing from a business process automation perspective. But there's a limit to the ability to address that at low cost that really comes from the way that we design the software and solutions themselves to start with. Today, when we build applications effectively are, when you ask why does an application do what it does, the answer is, well, you have to understand its history. It started off doing something, and then it was expanded and enhanced, more and more features and functions were added, and over time that packaging of capability is formalized but it's emergent. It's contingent. And the other thing about applications is they take in data and they store it in a form that's internal to the application, which means if you want to use the data for anything else, you have to talk to the application, which brings home the joys of application integration, or alternatively the joys of master data management, both of which are pretty hard, complex things to get right. The cloud, because we can combine the design and the development and with the delivery, allows us to think about these problems differently. So when we think about what the cloud allows us to do, we really point to three major trends. One which is around the ability to build scale-independent solutions. A second one is to take this service orientation combined with the idea of services operating independently against shared data, along with then the experience that we have in the industry around Web 2.0, separating the user experiences from the programmatic functionality to solve a set of problems that would be difficult to solve otherwise. And these designs can be done in the context of the problems that we're trying to solve in a much more customer-centric, customer-in, top-down way, rather than trying to wire together a bunch of components. This is an example of an approach that we're taking in the print publishing ecosystem, which is one that's particularly relevant to HP because we have a large business that is trying to drive increasing demand for digital printing capabilities in the commercial space. set of services that enable that commercial digital printing capability to be leveraged and useful for markets that would not be able to afford it or access it otherwise. And we're taking this approach that starts with the roles and responsibilities of the publishers, the content creators, the print service providers, the channels, and the consumers, and building services to support all those roles in the cloud itself. So that connecting in new participants is simply a matter of connecting them in through data rather than through process functionality. So we think this is going to happen in many, many, many verticals, and HP is going to be focused on helping our customers realize these kinds of opportunities to enable the interactions that they have in the context of the ecosystems where they create value in the same way that we're doing it for ourselves in this print publishing space. So with that, I thought it'd probably be a good idea to give you a little bit of sense of how HP's strategy has evolved over time. As Joe mentioned, my role's recently changed. I'm now the CTO for EDS. And part of the way to understand why that change has occurred is that we're really moving from developing strategy towards a much stronger focus around execution. So to understand that in context, if you think about the history of HP since the time that we merged with Compaq, in that merger we were able to consolidate our hardware business and get significant scale and drive the adoption of industry standard technologies in a much broader way. So that's been a key lever to being able to enable this future that I've talked about. The next thing that we did was really focus on increasing the scale of our software business. And we did that through a series of acquisitions. We just three of the companies here. There were another 10 or 11 smaller companies that we brought in as well. And again, the focus around on those acquisitions were really around both how do we automate the IT function so that we can take out costs and improve the agility and flexibility, and how do we increase the ability of organizations to deal with the information overload that they face. So the other part of our software businesses are really focused around information management and business intelligence services to enable those things. And then more recently, we acquired EDS to be able to get the scale in our services business, because as we see this future of everything as a service, then we have to be able to talk with our customers and help them with the services that are relevant to producing the business outcomes that they care about. All of these have been preparing us for this future of everything as a service. That's what we've really been focused on. So I hope this helps you understand a little bit of the perspective about where HP is, where we're driving, why we're so excited about the cloud. And thank you very much for your time.